In the process of defending this book, I've learned new things a lot. I'm learning a lot, talking to people, answering questions. But in strengthening, actually, the main thesis of the book, why wisdom is bliss is because reality is bliss, and it is wisdom that knows what is reality. Not necessarily mathematical measurement, but the actual wisdom of knowing it personally, with your heart and soul, as well as your mind and your intellect, not excluding the intellect either, all together, knowing it as total being, fusing with it, if you will. To sort of the proof of that, you can find, at least as a speculation, in the Tibetan, so-called Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is wrongly called that because the thesis of that book is that there's nobody's dead. There are no dead people. There's just life. And what we call death is where the life in a person becomes too strong for the body that they're occupying, either because it's damaged in some sort of accident or something like that, or because they're too old or they get sick or something. And then the body cannot manage this force of bliss and vitality and energy that is life, And so then the life force seeks a new body and leaves the old one. And the new body is good to the extent that the being wants to be good, knows how to be in a body in a good way. And how are you in a body in a good way? Where you love your body, and where your body expresses its natural love for others once you're human. Even crocodiles and animals, reptiles and birds and things who lay eggs, they still love their chicks, although they get out of this thing of wombs, having to have it in there. Like a poor elephant is 3 years or something. Poor humans happier are done in 10 lunar months or 9 solar months. And, some mammals have even more labor, more carrying, longer pregnancies. And that's part of our togetherness, that's the root of the human embracing love, ability to embrace love, having therefore bodies that are more open, more gentle, softer skin, more able to empathize with others, to imagine their joy as well as, and even feel it as well as one's own joy, feel joy outside the body even, and definitely feel complete joy in the body, the human body. So those neuroscientists, when they got started, you know what they said? They said, what is the meaning of this brain? We don't need all that brain. We only use about 7, 8, 9, 10%. I don't know if they still say that. I'm not a neuroscientist, so please correct me, anybody who is. But they used to say that in the early stages of neuroscience. So 7% is all you need. What? It's redundant, all that stuff in the brain. It's completely redundant. And guess what? Women's brains are more redundant than men's, they were saying. I love that one. They're more redundant than men. What? Why is that? It's not redundant. The brain can feel joy. The brain knows delight, bliss. The brain can be orgasmic, not just the lower chakra, all the way up the body, the whole body. Fingertips can feel it, and channel to the whole body is a brain. Actually, it's a walking brain, draped around the skeleton with a bunch of flesh and organs in there, pumping in the oxygen, pumping out the carbon. But the nerves are everywhere, It's one giant tree. It's like a tree. And then the subtle body. Oh, the yogis will tell you, and the yoginis will tell you about the subtle body. So the human being, we came to be this being, and we accepted the vulnerability. We sorted from being more armored, well-armored animals, because we were born and reborn so many times, and we had brief moments of just being the vast energy without a body. But then that usually scared us because we felt we were going to expand to infinity, and if you feel you have to have your boundary, then that feels almost like you're going to burst. So it then scares you. And then also, if you can expand beyond where you're just holding on to it in a gut or something, then you're afraid that around the corner there's going to be a crocodile waiting for you or something like that. Because we're used to being like watching out for our boundaries, right? So that's why if you study the Tibetan book of natural liberation, by learning something that we are living in between states, is what the actual title is. And birth to death is a between state. And every day we are slowly dying every day, but we don't mind because our life is so much stronger than whatever we shed, I call us, what we are is we are consciously the dying live instead of the living dead. People who are so scared of death and think I'm just my body and that's all I am, and I'm going to hold on as long as I can, and I'm happy to have a pig's kidney in there or whatever, or I'll implant myself in a robot, I'll freeze myself with Walt Disney down in Los Angeles there in the big cryogenic place where he's waiting to where he can be downloaded in a Mickey Mouse computer. Did you know that he is? He's quick frozen at death. You can do that. You can pay for that. Which really, who wants it? Then he was really surprised when he was rising in the between state. He looked back, saw that frozen body, said, "Oh, I'm not going to want that. I don't even like my old body. I'm going for a much better body. I'm going to be like, maybe I'll be female in my life, or I'll be non-binary maybe. That'd even be better. Then I won't feel lonely on Saturday night. I'll be non-binary." So there are many beings that are non-binary in other planes of existence. But they're not as fortunate. We are quite fortunate, nevertheless, with all our problems. Apparently, we're very fortunate, but that's another story. So anyway, once we have to face it, we have to realize the death situation. To really understand nirvana, we have to understand that death is not horrible. Fighting it can be horrible. And being scared and carrying the fear into it can be horrible. And then thinking of it as looming there as the big thing we're so terrified of makes us weak and makes life horrible. It makes us living dead because we're anticipating something that we don't know what it is. And in that light, actually, I do like the atheists a little bit. They have a spirituality. They didn't like 3 centuries ago those horrible preachers telling them they were all going to go to hell, because those preachers were projecting a God who was as vindictive and nasty as the local landlord, and was going to send everybody to hell who didn't pay enough rent. And a ridiculous behavior, to project an omnipotent being who hates everybody and throws them in hell, except for a couple of people who have the right country club membership card, So it's just utterly ridiculous. It's a projection of kind of a nasty social structure, really, only. There are plenty of gods. Buddha never denied the existence of gods. They're mostly quite nice, but there's no one who's the big boss and controls everything. And there's some who would like to, and they're usually the not nice ones. The nice ones are happy for others to take some responsibility and help out. That's precisely why they supported Buddha and the Buddhist movement in history. And he always got along with all the religions, but caused the more extremist versions of those religions to re-theologize that deity and stop blaming the deity for all the bad stuff, or thinking even it was doing it as a punishment for some bad, naughty people. That's so cuckoo, That's great. All the great English poets and many great Western poets recognize that, and Muslim ones, Sufis, and Hasidics, and Kabbalists. And so the Abrahamics are also good, and that they have that Buddhist that is enlightened. They have the enlightened vein, but it's just those social systems that were less open because they were less wealthy until modern times. Anyway, never mind that. So we'll go to any kind of question in a minute, but that was so what death is the vastness of life. I just met a friend of mine who I've known since we were 13, who is dying. He has bad cancer, tried chemo, tried radiation. Radiation actually says helps with the pain, but they gave up on the chemo with him, and they gave him 4 months. And then his wife heard one of them muttering maybe 6. So they have 4 to 6 in their mind. And he's so cute and sweet. He looks completely different, sort of shriveled, I think, the chemo. And he has a funny beard. He was always clean shaven, but he has a funny beard going in all directions. And he looks very cute. And he's quite happy, but he's in pain, but he's quite happy. And when I met him, he was like, well, don't look worried. I'm happy. He says, why? Well, because, I read your Book of the Dead. I read that. I know that when I break free from this one, it isn't working, this machinery here, this Tom body, then I'm going to be infinite energy. I'm going to be momentary Buddha. I'm going to be in the moment. But probably I'm not, I didn't meditate enough. I'm sorry, I realize that. I didn't meditate enough on letting go and just trying to let go my boundary, in a way, just letting go. I didn't carry the letting go with samadhi to where I sort of left all differentiated things behind. The vast freedom of emptiness, the vast freedom of the supreme self, as the Hindus call it, as the vast supreme self of selflessness, as the Buddhists call it, and of Brahmahood, Brahma Nirvana, the Hindus call it. But same thing. It's like where all this differentiation is shown to be like unreal, and it's all just a vast field of blissful, infinite, inexhaustible energy. Not nothing, everything simultaneously, but everything without any problems. But I know, therefore, when I have that experience, when my indestructible soul drop, as the Buddhists esoterically called it, my selfless soul drop becomes fused with its matrix, which is this infinity of positive energy. At the moment of, that's the definition of the moment of death. When that happens, I will probably pass out, because it'll be too threatening for me to just sort of not be someone at some point of somewhere, but to be everywhere. And then I'll try to resurrect some sort of boundaried person in some location where I can feel I can control things around me. I'm sure probably will do that, but next time I won't do it as much as I did in this life. I'll be a little more bigger and more open, and I'll be a bigger body and everything. I know that. So death is the biggest trip, explosive bliss trip possible. I know that, he said. And he'd read the near-death literature. Have you ever read NDEs, any of you? Have you read that? All the shaman, Lisa, Isa is there. Shamans know that. They know that the energy of nature that produces nature, it produces us. And it's bigger than any particular one phenomena in nature or in us. And it's endlessly fruitful. They call it the Great Mother, And if you read the beginning instruction in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but I use it only because that's what the English people say, but it's showing that no one stays dead. No one becomes nothing. No one becomes, they just leave the particular structure of a separated being temporarily and actually go ahead and create another one. And even a Buddha creates another one, but a Buddha doesn't have to, is the difference. We do by an instinct of some sort of further self-continuum that we have, because we're not afraid to be everything. But a Buddha accepts being everything, and then they become free of the freedom, where that freedom, there's a difference between a oneness where nobody's there, including you, that you can experience that kind of level of freedom. Meditatively, you definitely can in your life. Maybe some of you have. But that itself seems like an absolute state to you, and some mystical traditions define it as an absolute state, and that's a mistake, because there's no such thing as an absolute state, because a state means something that's different from another state. You were finite, and suddenly you felt infinite. But that infinite, then what's feeling infinite? There was a boundary where you didn't feel infinite in time and space. Therefore, it's a relational state that seems like what you imagine the absolute to be. And when you realize that, then everybody's back in it. So it's all one, but everybody else is there. And then, whoa, you're all blissed out and they're not, a lot of them. There are a lot of others who are all blissed out, you discover. But there are so many who aren't. So then what? Oh, why aren't you? Why are you worrying? What's the problem? But you're a vast field. That field of empathy, but also bliss that goes with the empathy. So you totally feel everybody's suffering, but you also see that even they have simply contorted their own bliss-made embodiment, which is made of bliss actually, but they've contorted it in such a way that they're convinced that it needs bliss doesn't have enough, craving it. But they wouldn't even crave it if they didn't suddenly know that there was such a thing. But then that's buried so much in their self-denial and other denial and like false discriminations that they can't be there in the moment. And you know that. So then you become, your field automatically produces whatever emanation, this is called the Nirmanakaya, whatever they need to interact with that will open the door for them to discover what their own soul is made of. Not discover what some other thing is that you tell them about, to discover what they really are made of in themselves, which is pure joy of relationality. Like your one cell in... I have an answer for that. You don't need an answer for that. Just enjoy it. Okay? I'm not sure I understand. Well, that's the thing. Just keep working at it and you will. My watch is asking questions. Well, you guys can ask questions too now. So, it's used to me, you know. I got it. You can delete that. Goodbye. Back to time. Okay. So here we are. So, you know, what does Isa say when she does her shamanic circle? Beauty before me, beauty behind me, beauty to the right side, beauty to the left side, beauty below me, beauty above me, beauty in the past forever, beauty in the future forever, beauty all around me forever, beauty in the dimple in my cheek, even when I'm trying to frown and look serious. But there's we call that, in my family, we have a thing, we call it the smile button. When a child wants to be mad because they didn't get something they craved, and they're looking like that, they make a dimple. And then if you just touch the dimple, and then they laugh and smile. They sort of do. Some people more bury the smile button. Okay? So that's it. Now, any question? So wisdom is bliss, means take a break, have fun. And it doesn't say, by the way, will change your life. It just says can change your life. Because actually, nothing anybody else does is automatically going to do anything to you, because you are all free beings. So it's what you do yourself. And nirvana is what you have yourself. It could be, you might end up discovering it's what you're made of, is freedom. Free love. You were made of free love. You don't have to run out and be a hippie and get over and wear yourself out. You yourself are made of it, because you're, one cell on the bicep likes the next cell, and one finger likes the next finger, and therefore you're in the microbiome. One microbiome resident likes the one next to them. So there's a billion of them. They're all different DNAs. They're all DNAing up a storm in there. You realize that you only have 23,000 genes, but your microbiome has billion genes of other creatures. Some other person, that's easy to deal with. It's like your microbiome is obviously there being democracy in there. Anybody who's trying to domineer the other ones, they kick them out. But they like him, but they say, well, he's not doing himself any good fighting in here to try to control everybody else, because he's only doing that because he's not enjoying being himself enough. That's the problem. Okay. Wonderful. What are you laughing, Laura?
I'm giggling in joy.
Good. Thank you.
And he says
wonderful.
In joy.
So, any other question? Anybody? You don't have to.
Well, first I want to say I love to digress, so that's my preference. But I want to share a couple of comments and.
What's your preference? What did you say?
I love your digressions.
So, okay, good.
Yeah, they're great.
Good.
So first I want to read you a comment from Athena. And Athena says, "This is my first Bob Thurman lecture and I love it."
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you. Your fire and voice and heart are lighting me up. I've read your books through my studies at Sacred Stream, but now I need to go back and read again with your fiery, excellent voice behind the words.
Oh,
I'm
that's
just
nice.
smiling ear to ear. To hear you today, thank you. Your wisdom is fire in my heart.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. That makes my day. I like that. That's what I want, because here's the thing: we need a revolution. It's even His Holiness Dalai Lama, the most nonviolent, convinced and determined person since Gandhi, who is responsible for a population and a country actually from which he's in exile because of a communist gangster takeover, and he says we need a revolution, and he has called it an ethical revolution, and he's called it a spiritual revolution, and he's called it a nonviolent revolution. But one thing I think he left for me to call it is a bliss revolution, a joy revolution. That is to say, we can't be angry with Joe Manchin. I know I wish I could be with Kirsten Sinema. We can't be angry with him. We can't be angry with Mitch McConnell. We have to love each one of his four sub-chins, each one of the four of them. When he says some baloney lie about something and they all wiggle the chins, just watch the chins and you'll know which are the bigger. There's a rating. He gives his own lie rating from the chins. They all wiggle in different ways. But we can't hate him. We have to love him. And meaning wanting him to be happy. That doesn't mean we're going to be trampled by them. We can be forceful with them. We can speak to them strongly. But we do it in a loving way. We have to love the Donald. He's pathetic. I was trying to be mad with him. And so when Mary Trump, who was a very excellent psychiatrist, David Bullard will agree with me. She's a very fine, well-trained, and very sympathetic, empathetic, very philosophically astute psychiatrist and has a lot of experience dealing with a lot of people in difficult straits. And when she told his childhood in that book on the Donald, and she's angry as could be at him, she's really annoyed with him, but I felt so sorry for him. I already did, because I knew why was he grabbing all those things, those pussies? Because he doesn't ever enjoy any one, and he doesn't enjoy his own. That's his problem. So he grabs other people and domineer them, and that makes it worse. And I felt sorry for him ahead of time, But when I read Mary Trump's book, I felt really sorry for him. But on the other hand, he needs Ayurvedic massage therapists, Tibetan massage therapists, Reichian massage therapists to converge on Mar-a-Lago and turn it into a giant massage therapy facility and find the kinks that his Nazi father put into his nervous system to prevent him from liking himself, actually, so that he actually would really feel welling up within him the basic bliss that every human being has a right to feel because of having achieved the evolutionary state of being human, which is open to bliss. That's what humans are. And that's why we don't have rhinoceros hide and a big horn sticking out in front and galloping around and banging into each other. And like deer or goats banging in the springtime and banging their head to each other. If that's their main thing, banging the head, their lovemaking is pretty boring. No foreplay. No, nothing. No other pleasure. No, it never gets to the brain, I think. The brain is so addled by having banged into the other goat for 3 weeks. And then finally they find a female. And then bang, bang, thank you, ma'am, goodbye. Nobody has any fun at all. Humans, we're much different. So we don't have horns, we don't have a thick hide. We don't have claws, we don't have fangs. But we can invent the worse than that, of course, because we talk to each other. You know why we talk? Because we don't eat the first person you meet. We don't eat, we stop and chat. And the suffering of animals is chigla chiksa, anyonya bakshara, they say, one eating another, they just everybody else's food, and their food for somebody else. So they don't have time to talk. Really, they don't. We do. And we can even sing, hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I am following you. David Bullard, he's so sweet. He and I used to stand on top of a bus in Bhutan singing that song, because of course people inside were sick of us singing it. So we would sing it to the trees. We had a lot of fun. Okay, guys, I think what do we do now? And
Well,
nobody's asking a question,
yeah,
but
well,
that's
I've got a
okay.
question. Well, we've got some questions. If you can stay just a minute
Oh,
longer.
okay. You have some in the chat. Should I
Sure. Yeah.
open the chat?
Oh, I'll read it to you, Bob.
Okay.
So Clementine Moss asks, she said, I do think you speak about this in the book, but she says she hasn't heard you talk about your own moments of dropping into that oneness experience. Would you like to say
Oh, yeah.
about that?
Well, that's happened a lot of times to me, and kind of naturally, I think, because of previous life things. I've been a bit lazy this life, and busy also. And like when I was 20 and I discovered the Buddha Dharma in a practical way, I had been reading about it and I was looking for it. Went to India to find it. And then, very odd for a New Yorker, I discovered it in New Jersey. And very surprise, and coming back from India. And namely in a person, an old Mongolian monk teacher who had been in Tibet for 35 years, but who had come to the West as soon as the communists came in the 50s. He knew it was doomsday for Tibetan culture temporarily, and he had some mission in America, and came here, and he was Mongolian actually, but and it's a minute I did, I wanted to be a monk because I wanted to just be in that space forever, and it's tricky, that space, because it can become an escape space. You can get into states of meditation where you feel sort of free of the body, you feel free of worry, you're free of any kind of negative emotion, except expansive release, feeling of release. And then you kind of there's a danger of absolutizing that place and feeling that's your final destination. And then, since it isn't, because you're still a relative being, you have a relative continuum. And, the absolute, in a way, is irrelevant to you. When you really use your scientific reason, your wisdom, you eventually will discover. But if before you have discovered that, it can be very seductive. And then when it leaves you and you leave the meditation, there's a danger that you feel you lost it. And then you can be maybe grumpy to be back here, or maybe you feel you're being a great saint to be back here, and people, and you feel they should reward you in some way, and you should act like a holy person, and they should do, and you don't feel like you should do anything for anybody because everybody else is just going to escape. So you create an idea of the absolute that is everybody's huge big escape hatch. And that's against the Buddha's teaching. And that's where wisdom becomes frozen, in the last vestige of self-centeredness, actually. Very, very subtle one, but very strong. And what happens, in fact, if you, what you need is, you need someone to help you see. And there are many, and Buddha was a great teacher, and they are fundamentally educators, the great Buddhist masters. They are not dominating magicians. They are not, gurus who own their students at all. They are educators who serve their students, the ones who are really enlightened, who have hit that state of perfect freedom, but then realize that actually the perfect freedom is just as much when they were not in the perfect freedom. I can't explain it. They fuse that perfect freedom with being connected and engaged. And that's that's where wisdom becomes, what does Bliss want to do? Bliss can't abide any suffering of anybody. And when you become everybody and are fully empathetic, you feel their suffering, and that becomes impossible and unbearable for you, just like your own suffering is now. When I'm assuming everybody's like me. Some of you may not be, I recognize. I can't tell, because I'm like me, still imperfect. But the point is, Buddha is not. There's a possibility. At first, when you achieve that huge freedom, and I've hit that, and you then want to kind of stay there, but then you sort of, your commitment to love, if you will, your commitment to just go beyond being extinguished in some way as your surface habitual things. And your probe becomes like a probe where you miss the other beings. You're not content to be released without them. And because you have a vow, bodhisattva vow, or you have a marriage vow, or you have a sibling vow, or you have a parental vow, or you have a child vow to a parent, or you have a national vow, or you have a species vow, or you have all animals vow, all beings vow, or you love all the gods and even the demons, which the bodhisattva vow does. And you can't tolerate anybody sticking in that suffering. And you don't care. People say, well, there's infinite beings already free. There are infinite beings still suffering. That just goes on. You can just enjoy the freedom and just forget about it. There are people who will tell you that. That is not correct, actually, because it happens automatically. When you're really free, you're also free of freedom. You can't be stuck in it. And you feel everything, and your heart is there too. And then your heart touches all hearts, expands and embraces all hearts. And that's why, Buddhists cannot understand Orthodox, rigid Protestant or Catholic theology, where they keep insisting that this omnipotent being who created the entire universe only sent one savior in one place at one time, and even let the Romans waste him before he had time to really set up a university to really teach people how to love thy neighbor as thyself, which of course he was quite capable to do, and he would be doing. But he had no time because of the stupid Romans. And he was a good rabbi. He was the best rabbi. But he had no time to really have a shul. So they find that inconceivably irrational. If someone's omnipotent, they're not going to tolerate anybody being suffering. Why would they? What's wrong with them? Then they must not be omnipotent. That means, or they're nasty. But if they are nasty, how could they be omnipotent? Because infinity is not nasty. So they'd be overwhelmed by all the nice people. So such a notion of, like Shelley said, monstrous notion of God dominating Europe of his time. That was at the time while he was hiding in Italy, out there conquering all the fuzzy wuzzies and all the Indians and grabbing their curries and spoiling their monasteries or whatever, arresting their sadhus. And so not possible. So when you become one with all beings, and all beings are still there, they're like all your children, all your beloved children. They're your beloved self. And so you can't bear any of them to suffer. So then the wisdom becomes love. Now love is defined in Buddhism not as greed, not as lust only of a self-centered person. It's a component of it, but it isn't only that. That component is spoiled by the craving and greed, you see. That component of lust, that is pure love. There is a component. Because pure love is our life energy, it's our vitality, it's our health. You are as healthy as you feel good. And you have a duty to feel good, to keep your health, actually. Because your inner bliss is your health. That's your vitality. And so your love is defined as the will to the happiness of the beloved. How would you have a will to the beloved's happiness if you didn't have some idea of what happiness is, some experiential idea, have felt some happiness in yourself? So then when that happiness reaches bliss state, it overflows automatically. And then that is where you can be a presence that it enfolds the other. If you just rush up and hug a person who's in pain, they're going to get away. You can't rush up and hug a paranoiac. They'll think you're trying to do a smackdown in a wrestling match. They're going to chase you off. You have to just do a dance outside, or you have to distract. Every mom knows that. When the little brat wants that chocolate bar, which they put right near the cash register when you're trying to get out of the store, and the little thing looks at it, I want that. It's because they're spending $100 million advertising to the little one on those Disney shows are not innocent. They have commercials. And he's seen that in the commercial, or she, and that little colored wrapper. And they want it. Then they'll scream and shout. And mom knows you can't like just gag them. You have to do a dance. You have to distract them, or leave, take them out. You have to do something. If you scold them harshly, then the other people in the line will have you arrested. Social worker will come and take him away. So you're really in a bind there. But a skillful mom knows how to amuse, and maybe let them have one that's not so bad once in a while, and then shut down the commercials, and join the movement that makes it illegal to advertise to 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds, which it should be. But they spend hundreds of millions of dollars. Read Mark Hyman's Food Fix about how they advertise to children Coca-Colas and Pepsi-Colas and all the diabetes food. They do. The subsidized sugar that they also bribe the Congress people to subsidize it so it'll be cheap for them. Oh, it's just terrible what they're doing. Food Fix by Mark Hyman, MD. It's like a revelation. It's like Sermon on the Mount to fix our American food system. That's all the underlying conditions that get all those people killed by this virus. Is that bad food? We've been killing them slowly ourselves already before the virus arrived. That's why it woke us up. But unfortunately, their wake up was in the form of dying and being reborn happier. Okay, what else?
Well, Love Song says, Tashi Delik Bob La, I always enjoy your lectures and learn a lot.
Oh, that's Lo Sang. Hello, Lo Sang. Tashi Dele. That's this Lo Sang?
Love Song.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Tashi Dele. Tibetans, Tibetans have had this kind of thing going on. They've been having the Book of the Dead read to them when they're alive, and the Book of the Natural Liberation read to them, rather. And when they're alive, and that's what's more important, is when you're alive, so you can become a dying life. So your life will overwhelm your fear of death, and then you won't be afraid of anything. You'll be happy in anything, and you'll be a proper person for our bliss, joy revolution, love revolution that we need now.
So,
Overcome these people who are polluting the planet, we have to do it. And apparently, read Paul Hawken and plant mangroves. Sign up on subscribe to the Mangrove Growing Coalition to control the rising sea levels. Mangroves are awesome. And coast of California, you have to plant a lot of kelp. And if you plant there's these people who are planting like square kilometer platforms, a little deeper water, and they're growing trees of kelp out there. And they need a lot more funding, and they need to really grow a lot of it, because one forest of kelp like that, it grows like a huge forest. The land forests are burning too easily. That won't burn. They deal with the algae. They deal with all the toxic, Monsanto runoff that flows out of all the poison fields. They restore then the sea otter can come back, and they can eat up the horrible uni. And then they'll eat up the uni, and then people can harvest the uni, the sea urchins, and ship them to Japan and make a fortune. and then the old mussels and all abalones and all nice California things will grow there again, and all kind of fish will hide in this sea kelp. And it's amazing. It's like 10 times more powerful than the same acreage of regular forest as far as drawdown goes. This Paul Hawken is a bodhisattva. He's a Buddha. You got to read that. And never mind me. You all know about Bliss anyway. Just read Paul Hawken. Drawdown and Regeneration. Those books.
Thank
And
you,
get
Bob.
busy. Save your state. Save this country. Save the kelp. Save the world. And you will know when you do it, when you plant one kelp plant, that climate challenge response is successful, because you're doing it. That's the joy revolution. And ExxonMobil and Tyrannosaurus Rex Tillerson, he's going to come join you in the kelp garden eventually. He will. He'll be out there kelping away. It'll be kelp therapy for ex-fossil fuel executives. We'll have kelp therapy school. And then enjoy. Okay, beauty behind beauty before. Okay, thanks. I think I've run out of time. You guys have
Thank
run
you,
out of
Bob.
time. And thank you so much, Laura and Isa. And I look forward to seeing you again when I can get to the West Coast again.
Can't wait to
You
have you
know,
back.
one of these days. And I love you all in San Francisco. The Californians are the best. And don't despair. And plant kelp. Okay,
And the
please.
book is Wisdom is Bliss. It's a
Yes.
beautiful book. It's
4 friendly fun
life.
facts that can change your life. And it's not, you don't have to believe the book. You can disbelieve it, but then follow the education path. Use your own common sense. Everybody knows their own inner bliss. If they just turn in and look for it, you'll find it. Because that's what is your life force. It is. And it only gets more at death, because it will wear out the body. That does happen to us. Even happened to Buddha. He'll show that. But you'll get a better one. Just all you need is to be alert and aware, which you learn to do by meditating more. And then you'll find a nice mom in a good neighborhood. When you're cruising it in the form of a between being, it can see through walls. It can be sexy. You can see everybody getting it on up and down the street. And you find a couple you like. The dad is not too obnoxious and mom is great, and vice versa. And, you can find a good birth there. And you don't have to be born in New York again. You can be born in San Francisco if you like the town, okay? So that's what you should do. All the best.